All right, family, we back. I told you I was going to get back into the story. It's bigger than what you think. This one more about how they covered up the abuse. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Let's dive in.
A church with deep roots in West Michigan and congregations around the world turned 100 this year. But instead of celebrating, the Protestant Reformed Churches in America, the PRC, is struggling with what it has called the private sin of child sexual abuse and decades of covering up for abusers, many of them church leaders. Target 8 investigator Ken Kolker and producer Carter Gent spoke to survivors and church leaders and obtained church investigations and police reports. They also confronted some of those identified in church records as abusers. Ken is live in the studio with our special report, Private Sin.
Amber, a recently released report obtained by Target 8 says the Protestant Reformed Church has violated state laws that require clergy and educators to report the sexual abuse of children. Over the decades, only one of the dozens of child sexual assault allegations tied to the church has led to criminal charges.
I was very angry at God, very angry at God. I didn't understand how, if what I was taught and what the Bible says, that he is a kind, loving, trustworthy, all-powerful, everywhere present God, then he was in that room, in that car, every time she put her hands on me.
The Protestant Reformed Church, known as the PRC, was founded in Grand Rapids, splintering from the Christian Reformed Church in 1924. Its 8,000 or so members are spread across 32 churches in the U.S., about a third of those in West Michigan. Last year, faced with a church divided over decades of sexual abuse and cover-ups, its governing body hired a third party, Guidepost Solutions, to investigate. The nearly year-long investigation cost the church $358,000.
I literally thought, because they hired them, that in and of itself for this denomination to do was mind-boggling. Like, we celebrated the day it passed and that they said, yes, we're going to do it. Like, we celebrated.
Guidepost conducted a church-wide survey, set up a hotline, interviewed survivors and others. But earlier this year at Synod 2024, church leaders denounced the report, voting that they never should have hired Guidepost in the first place. Some church leaders feared Satan was working through Guidepost to harm the PRC. So the third party will not investigate specific cases as planned. Instead, that will be done by church consistories, the elders and pastors at each church. Is there any guarantee those consistories will do what's required and go to the police if there's an allegation?
No guarantee, no.
I mean, what they should do,
that's what
right?
they're required by law and by the scriptures to do.
The idea that they would rather protect the name of a denomination than to help living, breathing human beings is just gutting to me.
The Reverend Ronald Kaminga, a retired pastor, was an advisor to the church leaders who voted to end the outside investigation.
The issue was, we're investigating sin. And in Reformed churches, the Reformed tradition, that's the responsibility of elders. Elders may have not carried out their responsibility in the past, but that doesn't change the fact that they have the responsibility and that they need to fulfill that responsibility.
But when sin is the sexual abuse of children, should that be left to people other than elders?
Certainly, it should be reported to the authorities.
And that's not been done in the past.
It is being done. I know it's being done in the last few years. I know that for a fact.
Guidepost report obtained by Target 8 described a history of sexual abuse allegations in 29 of the church's 32 U.S. congregations. In those churches, it had covered a total of 43 abusers and people who mishandled allegations of child sexual abuse. During interviews, it also found 45 cases of sexual abuse involving the church's schools, including some in West Michigan.
I've known since I was in seminary.
Crazy thing about all this is a lot of these churches, they still live in sin. Like the elders, the pastors, they still never got over their sins and things that happened to them when they were children. So they build these nice little congregations, these little private entities, and you know, they get people to come there and, expecting to build a better relationship with Christ. They turn around and this is what happens. But they're turning their life over to Satan, not even realizing what's going on. And it's like these people, they're so privately protected because they're a certain establishment. It's hard to tell, like he said, like it has happened. We have reported these past several years, but in the past, you have a history of doing this. You have a history of doing this, and it's like, come on, man. Like, you gotta get to the bottom of it. Like, when does it stop? And they all sitting there, we gonna keep it quiet and keep it in the church. Keep it in the, it's like, wow, man.
An area that the Protestant Reformed
This just don't
churches
happen in
had,
white churches. It happens in black
a bit
churches
of a
too.
problem with sexual abuse in handling it.
The impression that we're left with is that many more leaders and people care more about the name of the institution and not speaking badly about leaders.
According to Guidepost, when faced with allegations, the church has relied on the Bible. Matthew chapter 18, verse 15, quote, "If your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault just between the two of you. If they listen to you, you have won them over." Some interviewed by Guidepost, quote, "were taught that ministers and elders were appointed by God to be leaders. So how could a person say anything bad about them?" The PRC is a church run only by men, where women are not allowed in any positions of authority and are not allowed to vote on church matters. Some victims kept quiet, including Heidi Woldheis, who says she was molested in 1979 by her 6th grade teacher, Hulda Kuiper, at Hope Protestant Reformed School in Walker.
Where was I going to go and who was I going to talk to? It's like I learned how to disappear. Just disappear.
According to church reports, her abuser molested at least 5 young students. Hulda Kuiper was 90 when she died in 2022, never charged with a crime. The pastor at Faith PRC in Hudsonville, who supported the investigation, says he has spoken to about 10 child sexual assault survivors across the denomination.
In my mind, the sexual abuse that they suffered is horrific, and I can't think of anything worse. But almost all of them, and I believe I could say all of them who I have asked about this will tell me and say that the mishandling of their case by the church hurts more. That's astounding.
What hurts the most is the church not having your back, the church abandoning you.
Yeah, it's
the
a place
church
that you go
saying,
to that you feel protected.
"We're done helping you,
Having that built relationship
and you
with
need
God,
to
it's
heal.
like
You need to move
God
on,
turned it
and
back
you need
on
to
them.
go
That's how
be
they
a
feel.
mom and a wife."
Get over it.
Yes.
A Hudsonville District Court judge sentenced the 73-year-old ex-pastor to 45 days in jail.
The Guidepost investigation was
45
prompted
days
in
in jail
part
for
by the
touching
assault
children.
conviction of longtime pastor Ronald Van Overloop, the only conviction among those identified as abusers.
wow.
I remember feeling weird and it feeling wrong.
He got 45 days in jail in 2022 for inappropriately touching a teenage girl while counseling her at his parsonage at Grace Protestant Reformed Church in Ottawa County.
For me, it was just a case of like the inappropriate touching.
He stroked her legs, she said in court, and held her in a long, uncomfortable hug. It was her case that led to his assault conviction.
I mean, he had a number of victims, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
I remember hearing a dozen or more.
Yes, he did.
One girl told Ottawa County detectives that he asked her to sit on his lap, touched her inappropriately, and kissed her on the lips on at least 10 occasions. Police say it went on for several
Who they
years,
get
starting
out
in
of touching these
2009.
kids, man. Like that's where I'm like kind of like somebody like stuck on. Like, man, you 40, 50, 60 years old. You probably got a wife you've been married to for 30 years. Then you turn around and now you start preying on these 12, 13-year-olds. Some of these 12, 13-year-olds, they so forced to go to these churches every day. They scared to speak about it because their parents won't defend them. Their parents don't believe in them. And it's all trauma. It's just trauma. They get older, scared to talk about it. and turn around this man get 45 days.
Too long ago in her case for criminal charges. But other girls came forward with similar stories, including Elise Molker, who said it happened during a counseling session in the pastor's study.
I remember adults always saying like, oh, he just has such a passion for working with the young people, and like, oh, he just really loves kids. Like he would go around after church giving us all hugs. And
According to the police report, victims were reluctant to come forward because church leaders, quote, have been very intentional about encouraging their constituents not to go to the authorities when physical or sexual abuse occurs within families or the church. Van Overloop, according to the police report, had told church leaders, quote, they are not to go to authorities about reported abuse. Elise Molker says church leaders eventually asked her to meet with them.
having an older man like violate you in some way, and then having a bunch of other older men be like, oh yeah, come tell us about this. And oh yeah, he might be in the room when we have this conversation. Like, I was like, no.
Van Overloop, fired by the church, is now 75, living in Georgetown Township. Hi, I'm looking for Ron Van Overloop. Van Overloop refused to comment, but Target 8 tracked down another former elder, Don Faber, from First Protestant Reformed Church in Grand Rapids.
Hey, I'm trying to reach Don Faber.
Yes. Faber molested as many as 10 boys in the 1980s, according to police reports, confessing to the sin 10 years later. But church leaders did not call police for what they called his, quote, criminal activity, saying the statute of limitations had expired. Faber's 88, still a member in good standing in the PRC, living in Walker with his wife. And allegations of sexual abuse that you're identified in, and some. Could you at least deny those?
It's all been taken care of. Yeah.
It's all
25 years ago.
okay. Well, have you been? There've been no criminal charges.
Oh, no.
There's still victims out there. What do you? Can you say? What do you say?
Took care of that 25 years ago.
I was very angry at God.
Jean Bilesma is a survivor who came forward too late to prosecute the woman she says molested her repeatedly when she was 14, while a student at Heritage Christian School in Hudsonville. The woman was her basketball coach. She says the church has not done enough to hold the woman accountable. She's still a member of the church that she loves.
I want to have the hard discussions. I want to, even if it's raising voice and the tears flow and we get frustrated, at least let's talk about it.
I don't know, man. I just don't understand how these churches keep getting away with this, man. You hear the man at the end? It happened 5 years ago. Like, it doesn't matter if it happened 5 years ago. Like, there's still victims out here who say you touched them and you did not get in trouble for it. Like I said, it just don't happen. It don't happen in just Catholic churches. It happens in Christian churches all the time, bro. That's why when you go to the church, there ain't none but women sitting in the church. You probably got 5 men inside the church. And there's 200 women and a pastor. And then they pray on the little kids. Give them some candy. Don't say nothing. It's terrible, man. It's something to think about every day. These children around in America are getting mistreated by pastors. These pastors are being protected. Let me know how you feel about this in the comments below. Thank you.